Thank you both for singing. Good morning, harvest time. It's good to see the faces smiling. We're going to start off with a little bit of prayer before we get going, okay? Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for the blessings you've given us as a church. We thank you for these weeks that we've been able to get together, dear Lord, when I know others haven't. And we thank you for the peacefulness of this community, this area we're in, the calmness that seems to be here. Dear Lord, I know there's things that happen, things that go on, but there seems to be a lot less disease here and a lot less other things that's going on that's displeasing at times. And I thank you so much for the peace you're providing in this area, this little sweet spot. Guide us and direct us, dear Lord, today. Help me to be able to preach the word you want me to preach. Help me to explain it so we all can understand it, me included. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. God is looking for real men. When you watch TV, man alive, they play off the guy as the dumbest guy, period. There's nothing about showing any intelligence, and there's a constant stream of things going on against the male today, especially the white male, which is kind of interesting. But we won't get into a lot of political stuff, but I want to talk about how it's time for men to step up and be what they were created to be the man. There's a special job for men to do, and God has a desire for us to follow it. So let's look in Ezekiel 22:30, and I'm going to read this in King James first. There's a couple of reasons. We're going to look at NLT as well, but he says, I sought for a man among them. Now, tell me, among them, there were probably men and women all over the place, right? Typically how it is. We're approximately 50-50. I've got that worked out, right? That should make up the hedge and stand in the gap before me in the land, that I should not destroy it. Who's the enemy? God could be the enemy, right? But I found none. Now tell me, we're all here. There's mankind all over the world. X and Y makes a child, or X and X makes a child. But what I'm trying to say is there are men out here. Somewhere in this time and past, there's been men, but they're not the man that God's looking for. And I find it really interesting. Now let's look at New Living Translation. And I like the idea of the way it says man, but it says, I look for someone. I'm going to say specifically, guys, today he's talking about men to be a leader here. Women can lead. There's things that women need to do. But today's Father's Day, so we're going to lean on the guys a little bit. I look for someone who might rebuild the wall of righteousness that guards the land. Now, you got to understand, this is a little more of a spiritual view. Now, go back to the hedge. It's interesting that it's in there in that translation. It's hedge. Now, let's talk about a hedge for a minute, how that looks. And then we're going to convert back and look at the spiritual side. So let's talk about a hedge. In World War I and World War II, there used to be rows and rows of hawthorn hedges that were planted with ditches in between them to make it very difficult for the enemy to cross into the land from one area to another. And if you remember any of the pictures or anything like that, rows and rows and rows of hedges. All it was to do was slow down men on foot. That's the truth of it. Now, I went to high school at David Crockett, just up the road. I think a lot of us did. If you went to that particular location and not Lamar, you were introduced to the hawthorn bush real quick as freshmen. Because first thing an upper class want to do is shove you into the hawthorn bushes that you were unaware were in the entrance area of that school. They're still there. They have some really 1 inch to inch and a half thorns. When you get thrown into that bush, you do want out of that bush real quick. And a lot of mean kids do that. What I'm trying to tell you is imagine miles of those hawthorn bushes. They grow like weeds, and they're very mean. There's other bushes that have thorns as well. They use these bushes as a protection to separate things away from a country. So when he says, I'm looking for a man among them that should make up the hedge, what he's talking about is there's gaps. That's where you meet the enemy. They intentionally open up an area between the bushes and skip a few, if you will. And then the enemy tries to squeeze through. You got a squeeze point to finish them off. The Cowboys used to use canyons, remember? And they would get on the top and shoot down. So there's a way to intercept the enemy. But the person that stands in the gap has really got a hard job. Why? Because you're facing all that enemy with just a few of them. You realize with a small gap like that, you can literally kill hundreds with just a few people if they're pouring in the gap the right way. So let's think about the devil coming in the gap into a Christian life or into our country, if you will. If a Christian man is to stand in the gap, it becomes different. Let's think about this. If we talked about the physical, let's look at the spiritual side of this. Who might rebuild the wall of righteousness? You know, righteousness is a hedge, if you will. Now that you understand what that hedge means, it is a way to push evil back. If you're righteous, men, and you're guiding other people to be righteous and you're leading that way, there's protection. It actually guards the land. You see what's happening to our land today, our country. You realize the lack of righteousness is causing a big problem. It's not keeping the evil out. It's not separating the evil from the good. We're actually being overrun. Now, in World War II, the way that the Germans would beat it, they'd take a big tank and drive right through that hedge and crush it. And they would go back and drive back and forth and back and forth. And what did they do? They opened so many holes that you couldn't guard the hole. There wasn't enough men to do it. And they actually had some with dozer blades on the front that would shove them out, literally cut them off the ground. There's all these tools that they use in war. So what you got to realize is the devil is not being fair, is he? He's attacking our country. He's attacking our families. He's attacking everything in a really hard way. And God's looking for a few good men. That's the Marine statement, right? He's looking for a few. So now I will pour out my fury on them, consuming them with the fire of my anger. I will heap on their heads the full penalty for all their sins. I, the sovereign Lord, have spoken. He's talking to Israel, but spiritually, he's talking to all this sin that's in our country. You got to realize that's how it's going. And I believe the failure of men to lead has got us to this point. Being dads and being leadership in the community, we've got a melting away of there's no righteousness left. As men, we need to do everything we can in the position we're in and influence those others. Vote for the right thing. Do what you can. Once again, a message came to me from the Lord. This is down in 33, verse 1, further on down in the book. And he goes, Son of man, give your people this message. I will bring an army against a country. The people of that land will choose one of their own to be a watchman. You see, God knows we're going to be looking for things. In all the wars, you always had somebody going out and doing reconnaissance, right? Or watching for the enemy. You can think about that in any period of time. There's always been somebody looking for the enemy to show up. When the watchman sees the enemy coming, he sounds the alarm to warn the people. We've seen this in movies. Well, let's think about this in a spiritual way for a minute. Then if those who hear the alarm refuse to take action, it is their own fault if they die. Men, we're supposed to be spiritual watchmen, right? Matter of fact, there's a book called, or a magazine called Watchmen on the Wall. And it's about what future events are coming, how God is working in the world today, and that's kind of what that publication is about. But you got to realize that's the attitude that we're to have. We're to guide and watch over others. We're to warn them so they'll be protected. If they don't listen, it's their own fault. It's not your fault. It's their own fault. They heard the alarm but ignored it, so the responsibility is theirs. There are thousands, if not millions, that fit that particular bracket. Right now, they don't want to accept God. They don't want to accept the Bible. They don't want to accept the truth. So they want to accept the lie, and they're ignoring it. If they had listened to the warnings, they could have saved their lives. And actually, Jesus would save their lives. Now, you got to realize that's a physical statement here. God is actually going to go against his own people, Israel, because of their unbelief and their disrespect of him. What's going to happen? It's the same God. He's not going to do any different for Israel than he would do for us as Christians. You got to realize that. When we fall short, it's the same kind of thing. It's the same God. He doesn't change. There's people, I had a person ask me one time, said, why is the God of the Old Testament different than the God of the New Testament? It's not. It's the same God. It's a different plan. And I said, that's what you got to understand. We have to make that clear to people. The New Testament has a new plan. It's a new agreement. But if the watchman sees the enemy coming and doesn't sound the alarm to warn the people, he is responsible for their captivity. Christian men today have a responsibility to warn others. We have a responsibility to be the watchman, tell others what's coming, be real with them, help them understand what their true loss is going to be if they're not following our Lord. That's hard to do sometimes. And there'll be a lot of people that will not listen to anything you say. But you got to realize you're responsible. That's what God said. You are responsible to do it. They will die in their sins, but I will hold the watchman responsible for their deaths. In a physical way, he's saying that then. But he's also saying in a spiritual way, it's the same thing for us now. We can't just let it go. We can't ignore it. We can't become lazy about it. We've got to face the fact there's a need. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. You know, a lot of times I'll get frustrated. I'm like, how am I supposed to reach this person? Or I would think this would work or that will work. And sometimes it don't. Sometimes it actually repels people. What I'm going to say to you, men, is if you don't know how to go about this or you're concerned about it, you need to trust in God. You need to pray, ask Him for guidance. And don't depend on our own understanding of how that works. If God makes it clear to you what you need to do, move forward. Stand in that gap, block the enemy, and help these people out. There is a way which seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Proverbs 14:12. You got to realize our judgment is not clear. We're contaminated. We live in a sinful world. The fall of man happened, and it has affected everybody. It's not like we think perfectly clear these days. We need God's guidance and judgment. It can't be just, I'm just going to do what I think is right. You realize that there's so many different churches on so many different corners because man thought he knew what was right. How many churches were there when Christ started the church? One. And now we've got everything you could possibly think of and more names coming. There's so many things. Subdivide, subdivide, subdivide. Man has broken the church. The church is only one church. There is only one church. Regardless of what's above the door, it's those that follow the word exactly the best they can. They realize they fear God and they love Him and they do what He wants. It's got nothing to do with the name over the door. It has everything to do with what your heart's doing within. Proverbs 3:6, seek His will in all you do, and He will show which path to take. You realize there's so many choices out here to go, so many ways to help a fellow man or a fellow lady out to know what they're doing. But you know, we got to go to God and ask for wisdom, and we need to follow what God says. Now, the wisdom of the world does not match the wisdom of God, and a lot of times the wisdom of God looks not correct to you. But you got to realize we're so twisted in our view with the world, you miss the whole point. It's hard to discern the world and what's right when you don't have the vision of God. You want the eyes of God to direct you. You want to see things in God's view. And that's how things work to get yourself in the right path. God's going to show you that path. In His Word, it tells us the right path. We just got to become intimate with His Word. Don't be impressed with your own wisdom. You see, mankind today is really big about, and women too, everybody, they feel they know what they know. You know, knowledge has increased here now in the last 100 years more than ever. We have more information stored on computers. There's tons and tons. You can go to Google and drag out about anything you want. Some lies, some truth. There's a mix there. You got to know how to interpret it. But there's so much stuff to know, and it's all man's wisdom. The Bible is 66 books. That's the complete deal. God completed that, started it, completed it, finished it. It's all done, and it's seamless. To people that say it's too old, it's too small, there's not enough information. But I dare you to attempt to learn it in your lifetime, to really get it. There's so many layers of information. It's the only living written word in the world. The number one printed book in the world. Now you understand that it is different. It is special. It's because it's God's word. Instead, fear the Lord and turn away from evil. You know, man refuses now to turn away from evil. He don't want to have anything to do with God. He doesn't want to have any of God's wisdom. He just thinks he knows everything. Everything started with a big bang, and that's where it's at. And it's not that way. I'm going through a new book right now that's explaining so many different ways scientists have discovered that this is such a failing deal. It's actually going to create the death of evolution shortly. There is so much raw truth in technology that we've surpassed their ability to lie that one out. There is so much information you wouldn't believe. If you want to take any one piece of the deal and separate it and break it down and go down to the fine print, it's a good one. A good example is this: is if it was billions and billions and billions of years, the parts of the solar system would not be cooling off; they would be cooled off. There's so many things. As simple as that. That's a simple one. I've got a book that's taught. A fellow is teaching to the 12th and 15th power in his math. He's got this crazy amount of math way over my head that I don't understand. But what I'm trying to say to you is that at that level, the super high intelligent level in math, you can break everything down. Matter of fact, it's been discovered our world is truly digital as we're looking at it right now. It's truly digital. I didn't realize that. If you take a atom or a smallest molecule in the world, break it down to its atom, and then you take the center core and separate it from the electron, if you remember science, if you did, it would be the size of a pinhead in my hand. The other next connecting part would be 100 yards away in scale. What I'm trying to say is the percentage of open space inside an atom is ridiculous. It's huge. It's almost like the outer space. And when you see the outer space and you scale it down, it almost scales down to exactly what our cells are in our body. Is that not amazing, the same ratio? There is so much pattern of God in creation. God says in Acts through Paul that if you look at nature, you can see that there's God. Well, see, man is looking so deep and so hard. Now he's actually going to bump into God right in science. It's coming. There's so many wise people that already found out several pieces to it. And as they go smarter and smarter and deeper, they're going to see God in the face. They're going to have a real hard time. Where things are coming around. It's amazing to me. And the information I'm just got into this week is completely blown me away. I know it sounds crazy to talk these things, but you need to understand that God wove every piece of us. Talks about weaving us in our mother's womb. It's a beautiful thing what he's done. If he's that accurate and that detailed, which he is, how on earth can we ever consider our wisdom to be wise? You know, it just shows you how truly ignorant it is for us to think we know anything compared to him. It's amazing. Have you ever heard, have you never understood the Lord is everlasting God, the creator of all the earth? He says this in Isaiah. Have you never heard? You know, there's people today that has never heard that God truly created the world. We have children today that's all the way from my age. You know, I was born in 1963. Do you know when the Bible was removed from school? 1963. You realize my generation was the very beginning of the removal of God from everything. And as we've had children, we moved on. You notice how much society is unraveling at a very fast pace because God was removed back then. You know, they say the church is only a generation from failure. It's the devil's plan. He wants to destroy the church by destroying belief in God. So they went back and the Bible says, if you bring a child up in the way he should go, he'll not depart from it. But you realize if you bring a child up away from the way he should go, he won't come back to it. He can't figure it out. He can't even accept it. The devil's used the reverse of that to train our children. And by law, they are taught many different religions other than Christianity. They're forced to, and it's the most craziest thing I've ever seen. Men, we need to take and do something as we can. If you have an opportunity in your life, you should. If you have a way to influence someone, you should. This should be important. He never grows weak or weary. No one can measure the depths of his understanding. If someone doesn't believe in God, they miss the whole point. But if they believe in God and think they understand everything about it, you miss the point too. He's such a large target to hit. He knows so much. He gives power to the weak and strength to the powerless. Because he truly controls everything, all you have to do is pray for strength and you can get it. You can actually ask for help when you're weak. You'll get it. God's going to take care of you. I'm not talking about health and wealth situation like a lot of ministers preach. I'm talking about if you truly are seeking the Lord, he will provide your exact need here. He says he's not going to overdo it. He never will make you wealthy or way ahead. That's not how it works. It's about just giving you what you need to get to eternity. His whole goal is to save us. Even youths will become weak and tired, and young men will fall in exhaustion. That's the truth. You've seen that before. But those who trust the Lord will find new strength. It's available to us now, the true strength of God. It can be in a spiritual form. You may even develop some kind of physical strength. During a moment when we had a little house that floated on the water at the lake, and there was the wind as the windstorm came, and I drove really fast. So I shouldn't have got there. Tried to tie off these buildings that were about to bang into each other, and I found two houses floating away in a 100-mile-an-hour wind, and there was a grandparent and grandma and the daughter and children in the house screaming for help. I'm not a strong person, but God allowed me to jump the longest distance I've ever jumped, from where their walkway was tearing away from the land. Get them and jump with them, jump back while it's moving, and get grandpa and grandma and jump back out again. And got them all in the car and got them out there while 10 was flying in rafters and 10 was flying off the roof. I couldn't do that today. I didn't know how I did it then, to be honest with you. I hurt for a week afterwards, but God gave me the strength to do something I have no clue how it actually happened. And I wrote all the buildings together off to the trees on the one side somehow and got them tied off. None of them were destroyed, and one on the other side I was not connected to ran into the bridge and damaged the roof. This family was truly had a real reason to be scared, but God provided the strength at the moment I needed it. Afterwards, I did not have it. It was gone. But it was God giving it to me. They will soar high on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not grow faint. If the moment calls for it, God will provide it. Just realize that. But we got to be loyal to God to get it. Soars high on wings like eagles. I think that's a beautiful picture. I believe when you look at this spiritually, he's talking about how it's going to be in heaven, how good things are going to be. We get a taste of it here from time to time. If you need wisdom in James 1:5, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. We had some that had asked for wisdom in prayer not too long ago, and I pray God did that. But I also believe we should all take that responsibility to pray for wisdom. In this world, it's easy to get caught up in the wisdom of the world or feel like you have the answer. But we really do have to return to God and ask him what he wants us to do. In James 1:6, he says, but when you ask him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. You can't be blended. You can't be, well, I'm this or I'm that, or I accept evil with good. You can't do that. You've got to be looking at God, and you've got to be living the life the best you can. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is unsettled as the wave in the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Waves just go every which way, don't they? And they run over each other. There's all these things going on when the wind gets high and you see water moving. Such people should not expect to receive anything from God. Now remember the strength we talked about a minute ago? When you just really need it, just for a moment, I need God to step in here and help me. You're not going to get that. You're not going to get peace. You're not going to get anything at all. God says you're not going to expect that. What do you got to do to get it? You've got to make sure your faith is in God alone, period. Not in yourself, not in your wisdom, but in God. Not in anything of the world, and not waver. Don't move. Don't give it up. You got to stay focused on God. 100% focused on God. People should not expect to receive anything from the Lord when you're not on the path. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do. What you're seeing out in the world is that perfect example of what instability looks like. Do you see that? Financially, we're unstable. People are unstable. They say the environment's changing. I believe it is. You do realize the earth is going to fail. It's a falling world because of sin. Sin has caused this. We're not going to fix it. We can ride around electric cars all we want, but the world is broken. You can do all that. You can do everything that some people come up with, and it's not going to end the fact that sin has destroyed it. Sin has destroyed the world. That's exactly the deal. It's never been the same since. And it won't be until God recreates, and he says in the Bible, a new heaven and new earth. He's going to redo this whole thing. It's going to be brand new. It needs to be brand new. Jesus looked at them intently and said, humanly speaking, it is impossible, but with God, everything is possible. You realize when you have God on your side, you have nothing to fear. You have every reason to be able to move forward, not let anything get in your way, live for God all the way to the end. Now I'm going to get you to think about this verse again. With Matthew 19:26 in mind, what if James 1:8 said this? Their loyalty is not divided between God and the world, and they are unstoppable in everything they do. If you go back to this verse and look at that, everything is possible, then this verse could read that if we weren't separated from God, if we weren't divided against God. This could be what it said. This is what God could say to you. Their loyalty is not divided between God and the world, and they are unstoppable in everything they do. Realize that it all is possible through God. Right there in Matthew 19:26. I look for someone who might rebuild the wall of righteousness that guards the land. Is there a need for righteousness in this land? Yes. Do we need men to guard? I searched for someone to stand in the gap in the wall so I wouldn't have to destroy the land. Who's going to destroy the land? God says he's going to turn a group of people over to a reprobate mind. He's going to turn them loose, let them do their own plan. You got to realize that plan's in motion. The devil's behind it. God says, hey, hands off, I'm just going to let you run loose. Anytime I've ever been turned loose, it wasn't always a good idea, was it? My dog got loose yesterday. She did not have a leash. She was running circles around the tree, bounced into the road, saw a couple of new people, bounced back into the yard, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Kim finally got her. The thing of it is, and she's back, obviously back in the house, everything ended well. But the truth is, we've got to kind of be under a leash with God. We need some help. You know, when man is turned loose, he's out of control. The first thing he does is just like a child. You turn the child loose, they want to find the edge of whatever it is, the edge of your patience, the edge of the space they have to operate in. Turn a toddler loose and see what happens. What they can touch, what they can't touch. You got to realize that that's just that nature. What do you think Adam and Eve did? Touched and ate what they shouldn't touch. Is that not what a toddler does? It's built in. God knows that. We're failing. Without him, we're failing. During war, they would shoot holes in walls, and you realize the only thing that would stop anybody from coming through the wall was if a soldier was there. Men, we've got holes in our walls in this country. We've got holes in the walls around the world. But do we have enough men to stand behind the gaps? Do we have enough real Christian men to stand behind the gaps? That's the end of this sermon. I want you to think about that. We're going to sing 571, Trust and Obey. It should be on the screen there. Please stand. It's on the screen.